gardener's world on the most glorious spring day. It's as though winter was a distant memory. And it's extraordinary how the gardener's responding. There is this green energy that is growing almost in front of my eyes in the garden, and it is sprinkled and spangled with lovely spring flowers. So while this sun lasts, let's enjoy it. This week, Carol will be selecting the plant that she feels most typifies the month of March. And Frances Tophill is in Barbados, where she spent the winter brushing up on her botanical knowledge. One of the jobs that I do every spring is to mulch. Mulching is one of my favourite words. It's one of those lovely, soft, squishy words, which is onomatopoeic because you're spreading a layer on the ground. It doesn't matter what you use. Organic material is ideal, but you could use stone or slate if need be, because mulching has three functions. It suppresses weeds by blocking light. It keeps in moisture by stopping evaporation, or at least reducing it. And if you use an organic material, and by organic I mean just simply one that will rot down, it will improve soil structure, and depending on what you use, soil fertility. Now, mushroom compost is something I've used a lot of here in London. It's fundamentally manure mixed with lime, and that reacts and that breaks down the straw. And obviously the lime means it is alkaline. So if you're trying to grow plants that are ericaceous in acid soil, it's not suitable. But on heavy clay like we have here, the lime breaks the soil down. And what is important is to mulch thickly enough. I would say 2 inches minimum. If it's too thin, it won't suppress light, so the weeds will go through it, and it won't keep the moisture in. So it's actually a waste of time. When you're mulching around a woody plant, like this Calicarpa, don't go right up, because there is a danger that you might rot if they get too wet and they stay wet and cold. You could rot them a bit, but what you want to do is mulch the roots. However, on a herbaceous plant, or these hellebores, you don't need to worry about that so much. And if there are any bulbs coming up, they will grow through it. What I would say is, if you haven't mulched before, or you haven't got round to mulching this year, something to do in the next week. I'm talking about timely. Carol is starting a new series of films looking at plants that epitomise the qualities and characters of each month. And now, in March, we find her in the West Country.
As the calendar flips into March and we launch into spring, one of our most familiar and well-loved plants pops up all over the landscape. In woodlands, parklands, churchyards, and of course, in our gardens. It's the narcissus, or as we all know it, the daffodil. Native to Western Europe, it's been around for more than 25 million years. The unmistakable daffodil really lets us know that spring has arrived. During the 50s, trains were organised called Daffodil Specials to carry people from the cities out to the fields in Gloucestershire and Herefordshire, the Golden Triangle, where they could feast their eyes on fields full of these beautiful flowers. The trains have gone, but the commercial growers are still going strong. The daffodil is the county plant of Gloucestershire, and of course, it's the national emblem of Wales. The daffodil, or narcissus, belongs to the family Amaryllidaceae, along with alliums, snowdrops and agapanthus. It's a bulbous perennial. There's a single stem, usually with one flower at the top, although there are multi-headed daffodils too. These outside petals, the perianth, are actually 3 sepals and 3 petals. The inside, the corona or trumpet, is where all the action takes place. In here is the stigma, the female bit, which receives the pollen, and the stamens arranged round its edge. At that is the ovary, which eventually, when the flower has been pollinated, swells and is full of seeds. When it comes to growing your daffodils, nothing could be more straightforward. They're really easy. You plant them as dry bulbs during the autumn. They're not really fussy about soil. They'll grow in dappled shade or right out in the open. And when they've finished flowering, take those old flowered stems right down to the base of the bulb and snap them off or cut them off. But when it comes to the leaves, leave them alone. Those leaves need to photosynthesize and send all that goodness back down into the bulb to produce the flowers for next spring. The easiest way to increase stock is to dig up a clump once the flowers have finished. Remove any spent flower stems. Separate the bulbs. Plant them in nice deep holes. 4 to 6 inches isn't too much. That way you'll have a lovely clump by the next year. Bulbs are fascinating organisms. Within them they have everything needed to produce roots, leaves and flowers. It's a tunicate bulb. It's got layer after layer, just like an onion, and each one of those layers will produce either a leaf or part of the flower in the centre here, or part of the outside skin. There are so many exquisite daffodils, and everybody has their own favourites, but here are some of mine. You don't have to be big to be beautiful. One of the most charming of all daffodils is Narcissus bulbocodium, the hoop petticoat daffodil, and it often grows on acid soils. It's a great bulb to naturalise because it has many more seeds than other daffodils. More seeds, more bulb. Bass Flame is a heritage variety dating back to before World War I. It was a favourite in the Cornish cut flower trade. Perhaps my all-time favourite has to be our own wild daffodil, Narcissus pseudo-narcissus, the Lent lily. It's a beautiful flower. Such a wondrous plant is the daffodil. It's a star that shines in March.
Of course, daffodils are the less likely seasonal visitor are frogs. And this little pond that I made a couple of years ago, and it's really not much more than a scrape in the ground with a lining, has got dozens of frogs in it. That croaking can grow and swell, and sometimes I can hear it from the house. Right then, we'd better go and do some serious pruning. Come on. The 4 purple hazels here in the centre of the jewel garden have looked fantastic. They're a hazel called Corylus maxima purpurea, but they've got too big and they're shading out plants that need as much sunlight as they can get. So the answer is to cut out and that out and that out, and I'm going to take that out. Well, that's left me 8 stems. Some are a little thicker than others, but I'll leave those. I might reduce them down a bit in a year or two. And of course, these will become the great thick branches in a very short time, literally 2 or 3 years. The one thing I would say is do it now if you can, because to prune a plant like this so radically is stressful. And if it's trying to put on leaves or even flowers at the same time, that's a double whammy. So this is a job that can be done any time between Christmas and Easter, but to be honest, the nearer to the new year it is, the better. So crack on with it if you're going to do it. Now, I'm sure you are aware that this is the 50th year of Gardener's World. And to celebrate our Golden Jubilee, we are looking for our Golden Jubilee plant. That's the plant that has had the most impact on gardens in the last 50 years. It may not be anyone's favourite, it's just got to be really significant. And all the Gardener's World presenters are picking one plant that they think is the one that has changed the world most, and then we will be asking you to vote. And at Gardener's World Live, we will be having a big party to celebrate our 50th birthday. We will announce the one that you think most fits that bill. Remember, it's not a favourite, it's the one that's had the most impact. Now, last week, I put forward the case for Benny. This week, it's the turn of Nick Bailey.
Dahlias are fantastic garden plants. They've been around in Europe in common cultivation for about 200 years. But in the last 50, they've made an incredible transition. They've gone from being strictly the preserve of the allotmentier, growing them for cut flowers, to being mainstream border plants. Now, these plants, of course, are amazing in their range and diversity, all sorts of flower forms and every colour you can imagine except blue. There are now these short, squat forms which work brilliantly at the front of borders and also in containers. People used to lift them in winter. Now, with warmer soils, changing climate, they can be left in the ground, so they're incredibly easy to grow. They'll flower all the way through, from July to November. Some people might think of them as being retro. I think they're absolutely now. What's not to love about dahlias?
Nick is absolutely right that the way that we view dahlias in 20 years, I can remember at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, they were very unfashionable, and perhaps the Bishop of Lambeth was considered suitable for a garden. So it's really good that more and more of us are growing dahlias. But whether they're the most important plants in the last 50 years with the most impact, that's something that you will have a chance to vote on and decide when you've seen all the potential plants that we here at Gardener's World are putting forward. But dahlias are something I'm going to be growing here at Longmeadow with a vengeance because I love them. And where I disagree with Nick is that it may be fine in London to leave them in the ground, but here in the wet West Country, in the West Midlands, you lose too many. It's too risky. And they hate sitting in cold, wet ground. And it got to -9 here in January, and much safer to store them. And this is how we do it. We put them into crates, we lift them, and pack them in old potting compost. And if you carefully take each one out like that, and what I want to check is that they haven't dried up, and they're shriveled, and they haven't rotted. So when you feel the tubers, they should be nice and firm. And if you're buying dahlias at this time of year, you want big, firm tubers. Look at that. A nice, lovely, healthy, strong set of tubers. That is going to flower beautifully. And now we'll pot these up. So we've got a large one like this. We need a largish pot. And the idea is to put them in a plastic pot at this stage, which is just big enough. They don't need much room to grow. We just want a root system to develop. So they start to come out into the light, a little bit of protection. And then when the top growth is about 1 foot high and we get to mid-May, they can go out into the garden. So I've got some good quality compost. Dahlias are greedy plants. So that can go on there. And then I'll just put some soil around it. This will start to grow straight away, and you put it somewhere sheltered. Water it and keep it moist. Water it once a week, don't let it dry out. You'll very quickly see new shoots, and just keep an eye on them. If it turns really cold, you might have to put some fleece over them. Of course, however much dahlias feel part of our very English gardens, they are exotic. They were introduced in the 16th century from Mexico, and they're one of many plants from that region which have enriched and delighted our gardens ever since. Part of the world.
Only 21 miles long and 14 miles wide, with the roaring Atlantic Ocean to the east and the serene Caribbean Sea to the west. This is Barbados. Thank you. With its perfect tropical climate, it's a gardener's paradise and home to some really remarkable plants like yams, Christophines, and even locally grown bananas. And some spectacular gardens too. Which is why I'm here. This is my walk to work in the morning. Quite incredible, isn't it? I've studied gardening and botany back in the UK, and botanical conservation is one of my passions. So when the chance came up to work as a volunteer at the famous Andromeda Botanic Gardens, well, I jumped at it. The Andromeda Botanic Gardens cling to the rocky cliffs of the wild and rugged east coast. The 6 acres of stunning botanic gardens were created by plantswoman Iris Bannicky, who started the garden way back in 1954. Iris was born in Grenada, but spent most of her life here in Barbados. She collected and nurtured hundreds of plant species from all around the world, some of them very rare, and brought them back here to Andromeda. When Iris died in 1988, she left this garden to the Barbados National Trust, of which she was a founding member, for all the public to visit and learn from. Andromeda is a place I've dreamed about coming to for years. I've only been here a week and already I've fallen in love with the island and with this garden. I'm volunteering here for a month so that I can learn as much as I can about the flora and the people and their gardens. As a gardener, I find I'm very busy in the spring and summer, but I love to spend my winters travelling around and learning about horticulture and conservation in different countries around the world. And it's amazing the similarities that you see. Here at Andromeda, one of the first things I did was working down here in what will become a very beautiful white garden. And I was planting begonias and busy lizzies, which are 2 plants I know very well as bedding plants back home. But here, they grow much, much bigger and they live for much, much longer. Head gardener and my mentor, Sharon Cook. So, this is the palm garden.
Yeah,
It's beautiful, isn't it?
it's absolutely magnificent. The thing is, what people assume about palms is a palm is a palm is a palm, but they're not. They are so uniquely different. Some will have a smooth trunk, others will have leaf scars on the trunk, different fruit, different leaf shape, and quite difficult to identify, of course.
Yeah. And you have the help of this,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
This is Iris Bannicky's session book where she wrote down basically everything that she collected. But there's one in here in particular, the lipstick palm,
Okay.
collected on the 14th of November 1983.
Sealing wax. What?
Yes.
Is that a name for it?
Yes, so some people call it lipstick palm, other people call it sealing wax palm, and basically the colour of the red crown shaft is very similar to the wax that they would have used.
Oh, on letters and things.
Exactly,
Yeah.
And we have a wonderful native plant called the macaw palm, which is lethal.
That spiky one. Is that the
Exactly.
one we-
Yes. So you don't want to get too close to it.
No. There are hundreds of fantastic plants in this garden. A couple of my favourites are the enormous bearded fig tree, the national tree of Barbados, with aerial roots that dangle down from the canopy, and the ghost cactus, which is actually a euphorbia. So Sharon, is this a cultivar that you really want to keep going in the garden?
Oh, definitely. It's Heliconia stricta iris, named after the creator of this garden, which is such a wonderful honour to have. So we are taking out some of the weaker plants that are growing, and we're also cutting off some of the leaves just to expose the flowers. And these are actually modified leaves called bracts.
Okay.
And the flowers are the things that sit inside. So those are where the hummingbirds go to, all those little things in there.
Amazing, isn't it? Hummingbirds in the garden. It's a brilliant plant. But I recognise the flower from, bouquets and things like that.
Yeah, and they're quite stunning. Yep, that looks wonderful.
Oh,
Yay!
another job done.
Yes. Moving on to the other 500.
I mean, it doesn't really need saying, does it, that Andromeda is such a beautiful setting.
It is.
But not without its problems, which I can see here. I mean, we have pests and diseases in the UK, but nothing like
Yes.
this.
Unfortunately, monkeys. I mean, that's a lovely fruit. It's the mammy apple, fruit from the mammy apple tree. Tastes of peach and apricot, absolutely delicious.
And this is the national flower of Barbados.
It's the pride of Barbados.
It's so beautiful. I mean, we have things like this in the UK, that kind of mimosa, acacia leaf, but usually with the little kind of yellow pom-pom flowers, but nothing like this with the beautiful red flowers. I love this.
It's absolutely lovely. You know, you love it, I love it, and the butterflies love it too.
Come on, you come and take this from here. You have that. Oh, look. She's got it. Not you. You've got it, haven't you? Yeah, you've got it. You're clever. It's been mild today, but we could do with some of that Baton sunshine. Anyway, let's see what weather is in store for us gardeners this weekend. There you go. Hello there. Earlier this week in the sunshine, we had the warmest day of the year so far, 19 degrees. We're going to reach those sort of numbers this weekend, but it will still be mild and crucially at night. It's breezy as well. The wind's picking up westerly, so most of the rain is going to be across the western side of the UK. Drier and brighter in the east, and that's really the picture on Saturday. A bit of rain and drizzle coming into Wales, southwest England, turning wetter in Northern Ireland, but not much rain for Scotland down the eastern side of England and the Midlands, and temperatures could be as high as 15 degrees or so if we do get some sunshine. Overnight, we're going to find some heavier rain now coming into Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. There could be some soggy gardens by the time we get to Sunday morning. A really mild night, and milder in northern Scotland actually than Friday night. But we've still got some rain around. Rain moving southwards across Scotland into Northern England, Northern Ireland, eventually into Wales. But again, head through the Midlands towards much of southern England, East Anglia, and it's a good gardening weekend. It should be largely dry, rather cloudy, but on the mild side. Well, whatever the weather this weekend, there will be an opportunity to get out and do things in the garden. So here are some jobs that you can be getting on with. It's a good time to prune roses, but don't be precious about this. These are tough plants. Concentrate on removing any dead wood, any branches that are crossing and rubbing, and cut back hard all weak and spindly growth. Finally, reduce all the remaining stems by about 1/4 to 1/3. An early sowing of peas now should give you a crop in June, and then you can sow successive crops thereafter. I either sow them in double or triple rows, leaving room between the rows, either to walk and harvest them or reach in on a raised bed. Push them into the soil, rake them over, label them, and leave them to grow. Although ornamental grasses look wonderful in winter, their decorative time is over. They need to be cut back to allow the new growth to come through. Deciduous varieties like miscanthus can be cut, whereas evergreen ones like steepers shouldn't be cut but combed through using your fingers removing dead material. All this material will compost, but very slowly on its own. What you have to do is put it to one side, chop it up if possible, then mix it in with very green material like lawn mowings or maybe kitchen waste. That way you get a balance of brown and green, carbon and nitrogen, and it will all bulk out the compost heap. Now, clear it all, tidy it, mulch it, weed it, add plants if you want, but don't move any grasses yet. It really won't like it. Wait until you see them growing vigorously. And here at Longmeadow, that can be well into May. And then, that's the time to move them. But we'll come to that sooner or later. But I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. I'll see you back here next time. Till then.